And my guests are joining me on the set, but before that, some context. More than 40% of the world's population lives in rural areas, and urban sprawl continues to spread out housing, employment areas and services. The major mobility issue for inhabitants is to have a choice of credible alternatives to private cars. So how can we move around differently in sparsely populated areas? To explore one of today's hottest mobility issues, I'm pleased to have with me some very special guests who you can see around this set. We have Alphonse Coulot. Alphonse, so you're the mobility project manager, La Fabrique de la Cité. Hello, it's great to have you.
Yep, thank you. Thank you.
On my left, Côte, the CEO and founder of Wever. Hi, Thomas.
Hi.
Right, and Gaël, Queinnec. Is that correct?
Queinnec,
yes, director of Prospective at Michelin. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. So how are you guys? Good? Happy to be here?
Yep.
Yeah, so before we get started in our discussion, it's time to get to the heart of the matter before hearing what our guests have to say about challenges of rural mobility. Let's get a little bit more background.
3.4 billion people live in rural areas. That's over 40% of the world population. Although there are big differences between countries, with Asia and Africa among the most affected areas, the challenge of making mobility accessible to all is huge. Many point to the risk of a two-speed dynamic as we develop and deploy new mobility solutions. On one hand, dense, well-connected areas are benefiting from technical progress and gradually abandoning individual vehicles for shared modes of transport, which are more environmentally friendly and economical for users. On the other, rural areas and small towns may seem, at times, condemned to rely almost exclusively on the car to get around. Against a backdrop of limited public transport and high dependency on cars, sparsely populated areas are expected to guarantee convenient and comprehensive travel, from cities to rural areas and vice versa, within rural areas and between villages and settlements, within a municipality with scattered settlements or larger villages. While initiatives are being developed in some regions, alternatives to the car in rural areas remain insufficient or non-existent. The proposed transport infrastructure is often designed for large cities, but less well adapted to more dispersed areas. For example, nearly 80% of people living in France don't have access to any daily transport solutions other than the car. This reality can generate a feeling of unfairness or being forgotten, when in reality, mobility in less densely populated areas is a powerful lever for local authorities to dynamize the surrounding areas. It is crucial for economic development, social inclusion, access to employment, and purchasing power. Let's not forget that beyond its impact on the population, rural mobility has direct consequences for the environment. Given that 30% of greenhouse gas emissions come from transport, the impact of huge numbers of personal vehicles on rural roads is considerable. We therefore urgently need to offer people living in rural and suburban areas new forms of mobility, while also expanding and improving the solutions already in place and ensuring they are financially viable. So, what mobility solutions to connect and serve outlying communities?
Very insightful video indeed, with some interesting facts and figures. So whether talking about rural or sparsely populated areas, the countryside, outlying territories or city outskirts, can rural mobility be defined solely in opposition to urban mobility? This is the first question that I would like to ask you around the table here. So probably quick insight on that. What are the main features? What should we be looking at?
Yes, I think first of all that when we talk about urban mobility or rural mobility, it's too simple. The problem is more complex, unfortunately or fortunately. And first of all, we have to discuss about the departure and destination. You can have a journey where the departure is in the rural area and destination in a city, for example, or the contrary. You can have a journey across a rural area, but starting point in a city and destination in another city, and you can have all these kind of travels. So in fact, it's not too simple. And after that, there is the motive. It's it's a normal homework travel. This is for shopping. This is for health, for administration, or things like this. And for me, the third characteristic is the infrastructures. We can define the mobility like if the infrastructures are the same. There is a rural area where there is transportation mode, for example, and others where there is nothing. And we have to combine all these things. So we can define it in opposition between urban and rural area mobility.
Thank you, Thomas. Alphonse and Gaël would like to have quick reaction on what you heard, but also in the video, the figure 80%, that's huge, and that's in France, for example. So maybe briefly.
Yes, it's an issue for all the world, and including the developed country, but there are real big differences between rural inhabitants in the world. Much more between rural inhabitants than between urban inhabitants. There are much more differences between a French rural inhabitant and a Pakistanese one than two urbanites from Karachi or Paris or wherever. So it's really very, very different, and depending on some indicators like the Rural Accessibility Index in, I think, half of the world, at least all Africa that you know very well, more than half of the people are living more than 2 kilometers of a whole season road. So even if in France we have real issue, it's also issues of inequalities between urban and access to jobs and this kind of issue. Let's not forget how different it is all over the world, and based on the level of development and infrastructure density of a country.
Alphonse, your perspective?
Maybe to finish with another figure, you have like 85% of people driving alone in the cars. So that's like to see how huge the step is before we actually like provide some solutions to the rural areas. And I think you were right, like it all depends on what you do and why you move. Like we can probably have something regular if you move every day at the same time in the morning or in the evening, like to go to school or to go to work. That could probably work like for public transport. But if you try to move, I don't know, third day or just every single day because you don't know why, you need to take up the kids, you need to buy some food or something, there's nothing like regularity cannot work and you need the car. So I think we need to find a solution that works with every kind of movement. And so we need different solutions because we have different types of movement.
Okay, but I've heard that we need the car. So will the cars reign forever? That's a valid question.
Yes, but people are pragmatic. In fact, as long as the cost, the safety, and the time of travel are not competitive with other solutions, we're gonna keep the car. It's not we don't want to have a car and drive a car. It's just that there is nothing else, and it's difficult. So we're gonna talk about it after. But we need important investment in public transportations model and alternatives like bicycle, for example, but precisely in front of the needs and not big investment. But at the end, when at the end nobody uses it because it's not, like you say, it's not my need. In fact, when I go to school, for example.
Yeah, totally. I use an electric scooter, right? To be honest, in the city, so I don't need a car.
Yes, cars are very good machines made for a little bit of everything. They are excellent in nothing and good in everything. So regarding mobility, of course. So and they have been designed for medium distance trips. So much more designed for rural mobility than for urban mobility. Thus many new cars, micro cars designed for very dense environment. While in rural areas it works. It works. The issue is much more the business model, the cost, the quantity of materials for moving only one person, thus the quantity of wealth for moving only one person, which is non-rational. But as like a machine, I mean, it's a very, very performing machine for the generalist usage. You can do your shopping, can do...
Yeah, absolutely. But like what you've said is we don't have alternatives. Today we'll have alternatives. Today we're a little bit condemned. So this is...
Yeah, but I mean, the word you use is very important. It's like rain. I don't think the car will reign forever, but at least it will remain because of its practicality, its economy, it's the comfort it provides. It's just like it will need to go electric and lighter and more efficient, we will need to share it and like provide like car sharing, and just whether your family, colleagues, neighbors, you will need to share the car. But we will still need some sort of a car, just electric and lighter. But we will need it. We will need the road to continue moving because, well, it's practical and it's easy. So.
And let's not forget that the rain is far to be accomplished. In many regions of the world, most regions of the world, people don't have as many cars as we do. So for many people, it's still a dream to access, maybe not to own, but at least to access to the cars and all the service they provide.
Right. I'm just flying back from Africa and I can tell you the cars everywhere. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yes, but it's not because for the moment maybe the car is very important in the rural area that we can do differently. We don't talk a lot about eco-driving, for example, but this is something very interesting. 20% of the cost of the car in 1 year, for example, and it depends how you drive, but sometimes 50% of fuel can be saved.
You mean that people don't know how to drive?
Sorry. No, but yes, I at short term, and maybe you will be surprised, but I think the best alternative to the car is the car, but differently. We talk about carpooling. Yes, we have a lot of work to do, but eco-drive, nobody know what is eco-driving because maybe there is no money in this way to drive, but this is something really interesting. If you save half of the fuel, this is like if there is one car on the road and not two. So it's something really interesting. There is something else. It's the park and ride. The public transportation dedicated parkings, when there exist, it's really interesting. You go to the periphery of the town, and after that you take public transportation.
Right. So we mentioned a couple of things: cycling, walking, electric scooter. Right. So, but in sparsely populated areas, we can't use these kind of modes of transportation. So today, are there alternatives that really work, that exist? What can you share?
First, it depends on the journey. I think that below 10 kilometers, you can use bicycle once they are assisted electrically, which is a revolution actually for many people. And same also for the autonomous shuttles. For short distance, even if it's still a bit slow, for short distance, it works. So it depends on the journey. One of the issues is that we use always the same tool for any kind of journey by lack of alternatives and by lack of offering, and maybe by inertia also in our behaviors. But once where it's difficult, it's where you go from a very sparse regions to go to a city, and if there is no facility to ease the multimodal approach, like we have in many middle towns, even in France still, then it's very difficult to avoid using the car. And the car is also very practical to make trips when you drop the children, you make your shopping, you make multi-things that you will hardly make with alternative mode.
Now, if we get back to what's happening in cities, for example, we're speaking a lot about decarbonization. So all these wide-reaching initiatives, to decarbonize transport, which is a priority, right? So is it not going to threaten or overshadow rural mobility issues? What do you think?
One way to see differently the problem could be to drive the services to the rural area. If you can work on your little town, if you are health, if you are the ability to do shopping and a school, you don't need to move. In fact, you don't need to go to the city every day. So if we can't do differently, if we have to keep the car for the moment, maybe we could drive the services in this kind of area, which is not the case for the moment. You don't have Uber Eats in a little town.
No.
So why do you have a school or things like this? This is maybe a way to, at the short term, to have an alternative, not a mobility alternative, a non-mobility alternative.
Any views?
Yeah. One of the issues of the decarbonation is probably that today, the fossil fuels are not expensive enough to sustain alternative business models and sustain alternative technologies. But we are experiencing that their price is growing, and this will continue for sure. So alternative energies such as hydrogen, in Michelin we believe a lot in hydrogen, or whatever the electric source, should gain traction a little bit progressively, and maybe at least an intermediary step could be achievable, which is to have only one car per household also, because it's not black or white. You probably hardly can avoid to have any car because you have to go to the hospital, you have the children and so on. But maybe we don't need 2 or 3 cars per household as we usually have in Western Europe and the States. Maybe if there were a denser network of alternative options. And probably, the decarbonation will be helped somehow, eased by the cost of the carbonized mobility. And people in rural mobility, they have a much higher share of their income going to mobility. So they are very pragmatic. So if they will find a solution that works and that is cheaper and that provides a service, for sure they will go. There are much less behavioral obstacles.
You mean adoption will be easy?
Yes, because the pain point is real, much higher than in the cities where you have plenty of alternatives and you have just to make a choice. But in most of the rural you don't have choice. But if there were, probably they will go for the most economical and ecological one.
Right, Alphonse, what do you think?
I agree, because we've been very good at developing long distance trip, like with a high-speed train. You go from Lille to Marseille and you take the TGV. Then we've been very good at avoiding cars in city centres, developing public transport, micromobility, walking, stuff like this. And then we've not been very good at dealing with the mid-range trips, like you live in a rural town, you work in another town, and you do like 35, 40 kilometers a day, you need your car. And I think this is the real deal, and this is the big share of CO2 emissions. And as long as we don't deal with that problem, we won't do anything like impactful and useful, honestly, for this like CO2 transport related.
Right, and alternatives to travel itself, maybe providing, the ability to individuals to access goods and services without having to make like that real journey. And is there a viable solution, or are we just we have inadequate mobility services in the territories? So what can you say about that?
Well, you said Uber Eats. I don't know if we're all going to develop a Uber Eats in every French small rural town, but I agree with the idea that we need to just develop other local services, because like if there's no hospital, social stuff near you, you just need your car and go to town. And it's all related to like how we shape cities and how we tend to like concentrate everything. But at the same time, I don't think the solution just lies in giving people everything at their house and just bet on the fact that they're not going to move anymore. Because like if you look at what happened in the past 40, 30 years, just like we just tend to move more every year. So even though with the COVID regulations and stuff, we just want to move, like for leisure, like job, or we can't tell people, sorry, don't move because we're a bit of a climate emergency.
Yeah, totally. I feel bad about my own carbon footprint traveling all the time, so I know what you mean.
I agree. I think we have to imagine a new business model, a new way to live in these rural areas, and to give a second life to these towns, because I don't think that people are really want to go to the urban area. And after the crisis, the sanitary crisis, and today a study said that young people want to find a quality of life first now when they find the first job. I don't think really that everyone wants to live in a city, but there is the dreams and there is what you can
reality.
do. Yes, exactly. So I think we have to imagine a second life, because there is a lot of very good things in this kind of area, and this is the challenge, in fact. So maybe not a mobility challenge, in fact.
Right. So mobility is a real lever of attractiveness actually for territories. So who can we rely on to finance those new solutions? I think that's the big question. So the public sector, the private sector, I mean, everyone. So what can you say?
If you see the history, this is not people who choose the car. This is the business, this is companies.
Came with a product.
Yes, so this is
to make their lives easy.
The investment have to come from the state, the collectivities, communities, and after that, when the infrastructures and robust infrastructures exist, people can finance it. But after the big investment, this is the case in France today, and it's like this. We are in this direction, so we have to keep it and to do it now.
Yeah,
we will need both. But first, in economies like ours, where half of the economy pass through the public, because half of the GDP is passed through all the public sphere in France at least, but I think it's more or less the same ratio in all Europe. Everything has to be somehow connected to policies. And what is extremely striking is that I think you should do the numbers. There is 1,000 more policies on urban mobility than on rural mobility. So first, it's still not a subject for policy. If you ask for the government objective for access to mobility, time on mobility for all, there is no one except in 1 or 2 regions in Europe.
But that's changing, hopefully. There's more balance.
The words are changing. The policies are still not in place, and so there is little way for a local community, for example, to gain subsidies, to put in place programs that will make sense for them, but they are hardly financed. But so this is one part, and the other part, of course, is the business model. The business model compared to alternative so as long as the carbonized or fossil fuels are so cheap, as cheap as they still are today, and probably it will be hard to finance electric mobility at large scale, but unfortunately, to some extent, it's coming, and in very short time, probably 2 or 3 years, it will be even more economically rational, even in France or wherever in Europe, to go electric. So probably this should release some business models that today are not competitive. Because of the relative high cost of alternatives.
Alphonse?
I think quickly, we need to work on 3 things, like infrastructure and making sure the infrastructure follows the innovation. As you said, innovation for vehicles, electric and everything. And then probably the most difficult is changing habits and making sure the people actually want to use an electric car or bus. And I think the 3 things need some sort of partnership between public and private, because you need to foster innovation and we need to finance innovation, and the public can foster the innovation and the private can, with a bit of a private money, just tend to develop more innovation. And this is how I think we can work on going net zero for transport, is using the 3. And if we forget the social aspect or the infrastructure aspect, we don't really make any impact at all. So
You're right.
We need 3 engines, basically. Well, electric engine, but we need 3 engines.
Can we slightly disagree?
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Because when I hear changing habit, I'm always a bit skeptical, because I'm not sure that there are so unchangeable habits. I just think that there are business models that are not customer-centric enough. So if really it works, because people, they have pain points. They need to move, and they need to move at a cheaper price, because the price of mobility for rural income is very high.
It's very high.
Very high. And it's very unfair. And also the car-only system is very unfair for many people, the senior, the young, the very poor. So if we collectively, probably with the help of policies, manage to make a real customer-centric business model, I'm sure they will take off. People will change their habit for better.
This is what we hope. Yeah, Alphonse, you agree?
No, I agree. It's just like sometimes if you have two choices, like taking the car for 30 minutes or taking two buses for 20 minutes, you will take your car because it's comfortable. You have music. You can like call to your dad and just have a quick chat on the go. Even though it's like cheaper to take two buses and even like time saving. So that's why about changing habits is just yes. Obviously, if the private can provide some proper change, we will use new vehicles or new ways of transport. But there is still a share of the population that likes what it is and a bit reluctant to change. And we're all like this, obviously.
Thomas, we are running out of time. Maybe I'll leave you just a final word. But this is what you're doing. You see enthusiasm in the territories because with your platform. So very briefly.
Exactly. With the platform Wever, we collected the pain points. We want to build the future of mobility. Focus on the pain point because we are experts.
Pain. Lots of pain.
Pain points. We are experts in our mobility. So never disinformation is taken account. So with Wever, we would like to use it firstly, and after that, build and test because there is a lot of things to learn and test to build this future.
Fantastic. So let's build this together. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was great having you. And time to close the debate. An exciting discussion in so many ways. Like every time, thank you all for sharing your experiences and views in what I think is a steep challenge and very delicate issue.